I'm honored to welcome a few exceptional CXOs who are setting the pace in the industry. I am not sure if it has happened, I guess, in the past, but grateful for your time. Thank you for being here. We are joined by Dr. Ashish Atreja, Chief Information Officer and Digital Health Officer at UC Davis Health, Michelle Grover, Chief Information Officer at Twilio, Kira McKagan, Chief Innovation Officer at Ring Central, Vanessa Kallela, Chief Innovation Officer at Citi, and Alan Boehm, Chief Technology Officer at H&M Group. Thank you all. Welcome to Transform. Thanks for taking the time to join us. So let's get started. Would love to hear a little bit about your background and what got you to your current role, a little about your company, and what's top of mind for you today. So maybe we start with Alan. Alan, you truly are a Renaissance man. You go into companies, you've led major technology transformations. So would love to hear about your background.
Great. Well, thank you. So I guess I've just one of these people that gets bored easy. So I spent 25 plus years going company to company with doing transformation work, companies such as DHL, P&G, Coca-Cola, now the H&M Group, which is the one of the second or third largest fashion brands in the world. Spent time at General Electric for the airline industry, and just looking for interesting opportunities, things to do. Usually, if you can't get something done in 2 or 3 years, it's time to move, and had a fun time doing it along the way.
Wonderful. Thank you for being here. Kira, maybe we'll go to you next. As the CIO, you have an incredible set of responsibilities, including product management, design, engineering, operations, and Ring Central Ventures as well. I don't know how you do it, but tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, maybe a little bit about Ring Central for those who don't know who Ring Central is.
Yes.
Ring Central is what makes communication possible for companies of all sizes all around the world, be that voice, video, text, messaging, both for employees and those who are on the other channels outside of the company, such as in contact centers, communicating from the outside in to the companies. And we've been around for a number of years. And I joined Ring Central when we were a relatively small company before we went public. And when you sort of knew everybody, and we're now over, I think, 6,000 or 5,000 or 7,000 people. I've lost count. I don't know how many I've led our products and engineering operations, a number of functions, basically responsible for delivery of our products from when we were back very small to today. And actually today I run Ring Central Ventures. That's a new role, and part of that role for me is going back to my roots. I've done a number of startups over the course of my career before joining Ring Central. The last one was acquired by Hearst Corporation, and so it's my way of sort of giving back to the entrepreneurial community.
Wonderful. Thank you for all you do. Michelle, hello and welcome. How about?
Hello.
Yeah, would love to hear a little about yourself and what brought you to Twilio, and what is Twilio for folks that I'm sure everyone knows, but how would you? Yeah, go ahead.
You never know. It's always best to get there.
For the uninitiated.
That's right. So Twilio is a API communications platform. So I say that to say when I have to explain it to my parents, the best example of what you can explain is essentially things like services like Lyft and Uber. When you get those text messages or you buy your food from Grubhub, that's us. You're going through us to get those communications to send to you for SMS and messaging, as well as we do lots of other things, email, lots of other contact centers, things like that as well. So large communications API platform is a mouthful, but that's what we do, and it's a lot of what we do. So I have just celebrated my 1-year anniversary at Twilio. So I have been here 1 year. CIO, and I am their first CIO, which anybody who is a CIO knows that being the first is very interesting because it's a lot of explaining what you can do, will do, and won't do, just depending on kind of who asked you. And prior to this, I led large engineering teams that were from all over the world, end-to-end, full stack engineering teams for Concur, which was part of SAP, which is how I know Suchi, for those of you who worked together for a pretty long period of time. Kind of what brought me here and into the CIO role is it's interesting to actually go into a role where I take a lot of my product development experience and the building of products into more of the tool arena. And so what I like to say is that a lot of people don't treat tools like product. They don't look at them as full life cycle products that have end-to-end roadmaps, and they need to have preparation, they need to have maintenance mode, all these things that I consider when I build a brand new product for external customers. We don't always put that same kind of mental model or rigor around tools or technologies or automation around that. So that's what I feel makes me a little bit different type CIO, because I also bring kind of that product acumen to the CIO tech service as well.
Great. Thanks again for joining. Vanessa, you have an amazingly diverse background. You started out as a teacher and now leading innovation at Citi. Tell us a little bit more about your background and what brought you to Citi.
Sure. Thanks, Suchi. Really nice to be here. So I've been really lucky. I've gotten to do a lot of different things in my career. As you mentioned, I started as part of the Charter Corps of Teach for America, which maybe I didn't know at the time, but was the seedling of what I really am passionate about in life, which is driving large-scale transformation and change. I think, we all experience so much disruption in the world, and you've gathered a group of people today. I think we're all passionate about, how do we make the world better? How can we change companies, industries, employee experience to make things more seamless and more effective? So I've been at Citi now for, going on 12 years, and Chief Innovation Officer for a good part of that. And we're really focused here on how can we take both ideas from startups outside, but really pay attention to the trends in the world and bring them into the bank. But also, how can we support our employees as they have ideas about how to serve clients better as well?
Great. Thank you. Thanks again for being here. Ashish, a trained doctor turned technologist. How did that happen? And tell us, a little bit about that and your current role. I think you're on mute.
Thank you so much, Shuji. So glad to be here. And one of the reasons that excited me is everyone says healthcare is very behind in technology. So I wanted to join the other industry and show that we are trying to catch up and represent that. So my journey has been as a physician, but what I realized after my medical school was there's a science of medicine, there's delivery of care. And the biggest gap we see is in the delivery of care, because we cannot multiply physicians, nurses, healthcare personnel enough to deliver the care. And I feel digital health can really bridge the gap. And so very passionate as what needs to happen in healthcare is extending the arms of what physicians and nurses can do through digital health. So I spent 2 years in informatics fellowship after my residency at Cleveland Clinic, just training myself in programming, coding, data science. And then most of my time over the last 20 years has been spent implementing large-scale systems for electronic medical records, at Mount Sinai, New York, to leading innovation, creating full application development teams, connecting, really turning on patient-centered healthcare, while typically it has been physician-centered healthcare. We launched the first platform to prescribe apps directly to patients. Very much like you can prescribe medicine, you can now prescribe apps that can land into patient's smartphone. And recently, very privileged to have an opportunity to take on the role of CIO and Chief Digital Health Officer at University of California, Davis Health. And the goal is to really unify the traditional IT world with this emerging digital health world, the physician-centered and patient-centered. And our mission is that no patient, no clinician, no researcher or educator gets left behind in adoption of digital health. Mm-hmm. So So really excited to be here.
Yeah, that's a great initiative. Thank you again for all you're doing. All right. What is top of mind for each of you? And I'm sure in your current roles, you see a lot of trends. How do you make sure that you're staying ahead of trends and some innovations that you're most excited about, that you probably are innovating internally already or just looking to partner with external innovators? Vanessa, maybe start with you.
Sure. I mean, I just say, we think about trends a lot. And oftentimes when we think about trends, we look for places where it's not just technological change, but also sort of behavioral change and structural change. A little bit what Ashish just referenced in terms of digital health, right? You've got behavior coming together with technological tools when industry structures are changing at the same time. One trend that we've been following for a long time that I think really sort of came of age over the last year, 18 months, is sort of citizenship, or maybe what sometimes I call, the S in ESG, right? Where ESG, unless you were deep in it, used to be mostly about green. And over the course of 2020, the S, the social, societal portions of ESG really came to the fore. And we're seeing that play out in a lot of different ways, both in how as a bank we help individuals and businesses and communities grow. We see it play out in terms of how we can work together, not just with private sector corporations, but also simultaneously with governments. So we've got an initiative at Citi called City Builder, which is all about geographic or place-based investment. It's actually, outside of if you're a real estate developer, most people don't think about investing in a particular place unless it's their home or a place that they know. But communities are actually, really looking for private capital to help build hurricane preparedness or broadband access, and being able to pull data together and provide a way for people with capital to look at opportunities to deploy that capital helps us sort of build that marketplace and bring together the opportunity to grow communities. So that notion of not just social, but what kinds of different partnerships and structures do we need in order to deliver in this world, I think has been something that will continue to evolve. I think we're at the beginning right now.
Great, thanks. Alan, you are co-leading the business tech org at H&M. What trends are you looking for? Or I think you're on mute.
There we go. So thanks, Suchi. I think the one thing when I talk about what's going on at H&M is I always say, let's take a global view. And we're a company with 5,400 stores, 150,000 plus employees in 70 countries. And I think many times we look at things through eyes, especially if you're here in the US, you look at things through eyes of a US perspective. And so when we start looking at what are the trends and what's going on, it's we've been talking about sustainability, we've been talking about social responsibility for a number of years, and that's really sort of the top of the agenda, along with being customer driven. Is how do you serve your customers? How do you serve your colleagues in a sustainable and an environmentally friendly and in a social responsible way? So I'm seeing a lot more startups in a variety of areas, coming from Tel Aviv to San Francisco to New York, that are tackling these problems head on. And it's nice to be able to have a large playground, if you may, where we can try these things. So these things can be anything from materials and material science, where we have a loom machine that's on display in Sweden now, which takes used clothing and turns it into new clothing in front of your eyes. We have, from a recycling standpoint and from a knitting standpoint, we're looking certainly at new ways of privacy of information, and believing that consumers have the right to their own information and what they do with that information. So we've been applying GDPR globally and applying the principles of that where many companies don't do that. So we're really looking at this from a holistic viewpoint of what is right in the world at the appropriate place and time. And it applies to all different types of technologies, from digital to material to other sciences that we're involved in.
Great, thank you. Kira, what are you finding most exciting when you look at trends, or both external and internal to RingCentral? Oh, I think you're on mute.
All right. I'm used to using in central video, sorry, and the unmute button is in the different place. I think more convenient place, but that's not for this discussion. So that's what we're focused on. We're actually focused on the future of work. That's a lot of what we're spending our time on, and thought leadership, and both internally, so innovating in our own products, and in what we're seeing, what I'm actually seeing there in the trends in the startups that we speak with, really understanding how we all evolve now that we are emerging in a post-pandemic world. What is that hybrid of the future of work is going to look like? You know, there's this. While this caught us by surprise, we now know that this can happen at any one time. And this could happen during a flu season. Lots of different things can affect us in a way that we think about what it means to be in the office, what it means to work from home, what it means to stay connected virtually and to feel connected. And so to that, we're working on things such as understanding what happens when you're on video, for example, right now, and how are we all reacting, potentially detecting signals that are maybe much easier to pick up in person, harder on video, such as your eye contact, such as your voice intonation, because you may not be observing entirely your body language as well as you would have in person. These are just some of the examples that we're innovating internally around, that you'll see us in the product. And what we're seeing out there also in the startup community, a lot of attention being paid to really making this environment that we're now emerging into, which is a hybrid workforce, and really a hybrid from all perspectives, from events perspectives, from meetings perspectives, from doctor's appointments. You know, I don't have my doctor's appointments 100% in person anymore. Why? I mean, I can have a chat on video and be more productive, both for the doctor and for myself. So what does it mean? How do you make it more convenient? How do you make it more immersive? How do you make it so that you've got a transcription ready to be consumed right there? That you can find things right as you finish the meeting, that you could connect better with your team members, and that you can also take a break. One of the things that we're doing internally is we've just rolled out this application called Task Human to all our employees. And that's basically one-on-one coaching, one-on-one yoga training, one-on-one anything, personalized sessions that basically can take you away from your busy schedule, can make it more convenient for you to take care of yourself so that you're actually a better, a more productive employee, and you feel better about yourself. So those are just a few things to name that really are keeping us busy.
Great, thanks. Ashish, let's talk healthcare. What are you finding exciting and what's on the roadmap for?
This is great. As Kira mentioned about the virtual visit, I think one way we are looking at, if we have to go and do things the same way as we were doing before COVID hit, that means we have not learned anything during the COVID pandemic. We should adopt new ways. We should have take all the learnings. And one of the biggest trends we see is actually going beyond virtual care to actually, I mentioned briefly, to provide one-to-many care. Because in a virtual care, what does is it does create efficiency in transportation, but still one physician has to spend time with one patient during those 30 minutes. But with a digital care, and I'll give an example of that, one physician can actually coach 1 million patients at the same time, right? And so we did this initiative, and the technology is ripe for that. In fact, for some of the technology, we use Twilio, and we used Twilio during the Stop COVID NYC initiative when I was part of Mount Sinai, right when New York City was in the epicenter. And we were getting so many calls from patients what to do. We did not have enough humans to take those calls. So we created one of the largest scale outreach programs. We reached out to 1 million patients right from electronic medical record. We gave them the best information we can using the trusted voice of a physician because they were getting conflicted messages from the mass media. And then we actually offered them enrollment into monitoring themselves using AI. And 55,000 people chose within few weeks when we rolled to monitor themselves without a single human coordinator, right? So that's one to many care, which we'd never have been able to provide, even with we had, 30,000 employees at Mount Sinai, right? So that's where I think is the most exciting trend we see in healthcare today.
Great, thank you. Michelle, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so for us, Ashish helped with that, but one of the things that we were able to do, especially because of being a communication platform, was reach out to people in just interesting circumstances. One was helping stores like Nike figure out ways to still serve customers. So doing video chats with customers, they'd actually have someone in the store that would go look for certain things for you, give you kind of that one-to-one time with a buyer, so that you still felt a bit connected and could have that conversation, and it wasn't just ordering online. So you got a little more service from that level. So providing that type of support, we also have done some initiatives to help with different COVID initiatives and just getting people out and letting them know if they've actually been around someone who's, if people have opted in, letting them know if they've been around someone who was infected, and just sharing that if they've opted into these things, kind of sharing that. So using our platform for that. Internally, what we're really I think a lot of my peers are struggling with too is, what does work look like? The example I give is, I have been at Twilio a year. I have never been into an office. I've never seen a Twilio office. And we literally have tripled in people in 2 years. And a large amount of the folks in our company have never even been into their local office. And so as you think of two things, you've got a really interesting dynamic to this hybrid approach. You have the experience that people who have been into the office had, and how you can possibly replicate that, and folks who have never had it, and how you kind of marry that. And then you have people who probably will never go back into an office, or have changed their because of their family situations, and moved away. How do we make sure that we ensure that all of our employees are being taken care of? And to that end, one of the things that concerns me, because I'm always about making sure that there's parity among folks. If you're in the office, it's a very different experience. You can walk past someone's desk, you see them, you catch them. You don't have that same experience when you have a hybrid work environment. The kind of nice thing of everyone going home is everyone had the exact same experience. You had to get on some kind of conference call, there was some kind of setting, there was some kind of email communication, so everyone was in the same place. The difference is now you're going to have a variety of circumstances where some are in, some are out, some days, some aren't. How do you make sure that there isn't a disparity with how folks interact, how they work with each other, their experience? And then how do you also take care of people health-wise? We do surveys all the time. Our people team has done a great job of just trying to do things to relieve the stress for the company and for the employees. But is it working? We can't quite tell. So looking globally at usage patterns and how long people are online, and have we done core work hours, just looking globally at what's important and using that data in ways for us to implement to make sure that we support our employees internally so we can support customers externally is just a pretty interesting balance. So those are the trends that we're looking at. How do we support internally? By extension, that helps us support our customers externally as well.
Great, thank you. So the theme of the conference is AI and data. How are you leveraging AI in your products? Are there any specific use cases or case studies you could speak to? Maybe Alan, have you start in the retail space?
Sure. So I think we're still using it very broadly, and I think where we have to move to is more of applied. And I think that the situation is going to be where we start with supply chain and supply chain optimization. We're also looking at using it in order to predict future trends in fashion, what people are what interested. We're doing a lot of tests in those areas. We certainly are applying it in media buying and things of those natures that are very very traditional. So I'd say right now we have a very broad approach, which is something that will be changing over time as we hone in as to where are those best opportunities for us. We have a large team of people in Sweden. We're starting to branch out and open up more offices in the United States and Canada and other places in the world. So we're growing the team. In fact, we're going to try to to double it in the next 6 months, which is going to be a challenge by itself with the shortage of engineers and data scientists. But I think there's huge opportunity, and we are going to become a data-driven organization and data-first organization here as we go through the transformation.
Great, thank you. Kira, maybe have you speak to any use cases that you're seeing where you're seeing ROI from an AI implementation standpoint?
Yeah, one example is really interesting one in the contact center space was one of our customers, and one which is one of the largest telcos in Singapore, and they handle traffic from all over the world. They deployed one of our products in contact center that basically enables customers to communicate with them over social channels, over text, over messaging, tweet, anything available today to a consumer. And that alone led to increased customer satisfaction and ability for agents to handle just a lot of cases that previously used to take actually just phone calls or went unanswered. And then on top of it now, we've added ability for agents to be guided, to be assisted with AI technology, in addition to smart routing and everything that we had before, that enables now basically in real time trains agents and gives them assistance so that they can answer most of the incoming traffic now on an immediate text in a matter of incoming message in a matter of minutes. And that includes potentially hints that are thrown at them, potentially knowledge articles that are thrown at them right at the time as they're getting questions answered, questions posed to them that they need to answer. And that ultimately led to even further ability of agents to handle more traffic with higher customer satisfaction. We're talking about something like high 90s for problem resolution in less than a minute. That's phenomenal for those who've been in the contact center space for a while. And this wouldn't have been possible without the sophistication of the AI technology to be able essentially to understand what we're all saying and interject in a sophisticated way such that agents can pick this up and apply in real time.
Great, thanks. Vanessa?
Yeah, I mean, so lots going on with machine learning and AI for sure. I guess I would just point out two things besides kind of use cases in financial services. One, we launched an initiative last year called Ready, which is all around racial equity in data and design. We think there's been a lot of press about how important it is to feed models with the right data to not introduce implicit bias. We think there's also an opportunity to bring together because of the data scientists and data analysts with the folks who are doing user experience research and really trying to craft product so that both from a design perspective and from a data perspective, we're creating new products in the world that are equitable. And the other thing that we've been focused on within my team is not just AI, which is great, and we're very excited, and there's been lots of forward progress over the past 5 to 7 years, but all the tools that enable AI, whether you think about sort of cloud computing, the ability to ingest and manipulate massive data sets, just the fact that there are so many devices connected that create data to be able to use. Those can also be used to augment human intelligence. And so we're quite interested in the intersection of those two. We call it artificial enlightenment. And for us, it's all about not just trying to mimic human intelligence, but trying to put people in front of the data that will help them make the best decisions. And I think this is really important because most mathematical tools that we are all accustomed to using have been tools that synthesize or aggregate data just because since Mesopotamia, there's too much data in the world for people to sort of deal with it in their head at one time. But the tools that underpin AI don't require aggregating data. And this makes it really interesting because humans actually don't make very good decisions off of aggregated data, off of averages or probabilities. Right? It's not the way our brains are wired. Our brains are wired to make in situ decisions with just the data that is needed at that moment. So we've been exploring in places like upskilling. We launched a platform called Worthy that is all about not telling people in general you should upskill because knowing Python is a good thing to know for your career. It may be that for Ashish, learning Python was super important. And for me, it's not, because we're both starting at different places. We live in different places. We have different prior experience. So if we can bring all this data together to give people the information they need about making upskilling or reskilling choices for themselves in the location they are with the experience that they already have, then we increase the probability that we can get people to make effective decisions, whether effectiveness is on a function of I want to earn more money or I want more flexibility or whatever it is for that individual. But I think this notion that there's important work being done in the world about mimicking the creation of human insight, but there's also a massive amount of opportunity to use those same tools to help each and every one of us make more effective decisions in our daily lives.
That's amazing. Thank you. Michelle, anything comes to mind as far as any?
That would be the same for us. We have an AI team and we have machine learning teams built throughout the company. But one of the things that we've learned over this period of time is truly understanding the data we already have. And so I think everybody, I'm old, but AI and machine learning and all of this is really fun. But sometimes, taking a step back and saying, what do we have? And really, I like what I'm sorry, I can't see names anymore on the screen because I'm in the car, but I like what my counterpart just said, which is really understanding what you have and then taking that information and moving from that to what you should be looking at. We've seen the same thing with the aggregate data. Aggregate data, funny enough, will a lot of times send us down the wrong path, and a path we wouldn't normally have gone down, or we miss something very important around that. So what we're doing is we're looking at opportunities to do a lot of automation in-house. So especially because I have IT, as we grow the levels that we're growing, how do we, I can't hire 1 million help desk folks to onboard new people. So where do we spend our time? Where do I spend my time automating? Where do I take and direct my my budget to make sure they make the most impact for folks coming into the company and making sure that we support them in the way that we need to? And as well, the same thing for our products. How do we support our customers as best needed? So we definitely have AI and we definitely have machine learning, but we've also taken a bit of a pivot to say, what do we really need to learn and what do we need to do? And then how do we do that? And then taking those resources and those folks, so, taking those system resources and the people and saying, okay, let's focus on this and then maybe branch out. So go in a little bit and branch out instead of starting in this just massively large place and just getting larger, if that makes sense.
Great. Important questions for sure. Ashish, I'm going to combine one more question with this. So where are you seeing success in AI implementation within healthcare? And there's one audience question that came in. What are the biggest opportunities for AI in healthcare?
Yeah. As you know, medical science is very data-rich science. So we're just seeing an explosion. And these are now applications which are actually FDA-approved applications. So it's just a great time to actually be witnessing that. So I'll give a few examples, leveraging from what Vanessa mentioned about, I love the name, by the way, artificial enlightenment. That's great. We came with a very boring name, artificial intelligence augmentation. But the example is computer vision, right? So think of a radiologist, right, who has to look at a CAT scan within 15 minutes and make a decision. And that's all the organs they have to see. There's so much details in each one of things. It's possible in peripheral vision, something may get missed. So you can have AI, which actually can see from the pattern recognition, oh my God, there was a small cyst here, which you may have overlooked. So it can augment the capability of a radiologist to look at the images. And that's becoming mainstream now in many, many ways, from stroke detection to actually COVID analysis. Before even the radiologists look at COVID, You can look at chest X-ray, AI can look at chest X-ray and CAT scan, actually say this is 99% predictive of COVID or not. And that field has really evolved not only from imaging to dermatology imaging. We all have moles, but we don't have time to go every year, perhaps to a dermatologist to see these are benign, not cancerous. But what if there's an AI application and we're working with one of the companies which can actually look and can actually say it looks malignant or not. And then you can get a second opinion if you have to, or a first opinion with a dermatologist. I'm a gastroenterologist. There's a lot of augmentation that's happening in colonoscopy. You like it or not, when we go and see a colon, there's so much to see, but the AI can help us to less 10% more colons polyps we can find if we use AI. And that's just one example of computer vision. But if you really take the enormous amount of data, clinical data with genomics data, with other data, you can, and new data coming from remote monitoring, IoT devices, you can actually predict patients' health. So we have been able to do sepsis prediction before the person crashes and give antibiotic in time to prevent an ICU. You can do population health prediction. You can find these 1 million patients which are gonna be at the highest risk for getting this and do proactive care. So that is becoming very, and the latest part, which is really becoming very applied, is conversational AI. So you may have seen, when you went to a doctor's office, the physicians are typing and they are not looking that much at you. But now there's an ambient conversation AI, which will capture all the discussion between you and the physician. And by the time you're done, that is converted into typed notes, taken away all the niceties out, and you actually have a full note without needing to type. So it's just very fascinating how we are supporting, enhancing the clinicians to document, enhancing the clinicians to actually see things which they may have missed, to actually patient-centered care through embedded AI and chat, to guiding them through symptoms, to large-scale data mining for population health and precision individual health. It's just very exciting time.
Great. Awesome. So we have about 20 minutes left. I would like to take some audience questions. There are some that have come in, if that's all right. The first one is, of all the challenges for you, what are the low-hanging fruits, if you will, or what's the low-hanging fruit? Alan, maybe you want to kick us off?
Well,
are there any challenges that you're...
I'm struggling a little with the low-hanging fruit, to be honest with you. I think that as we've grown and expanded, one time in our recent history, we were opening up 400 stores a year, and so more than one a day around the world. And we went through such a rapid expansion that at some point in time you have to reset. And I think part of what we're doing is going through a reset. So no longer do we have the ability to simply make incremental changes in order to get some dramatic results. We have to rethink things. So the good news is that technological advances like 5G are helping us at a network level in order to be able to provide more real-time capabilities and information. But it's not necessarily a low-hanging fruit anymore. I think that we've tapped into that quite a bit. We have the ability to tweak things here and there and take advantage of mobile phones more within our stores for our employees and things of that nature. But I think that coming out of COVID offers a great opportunity to reset and grow this company for another 75 years. And we're not going to be able to do that based on the technology and the processes that have got us to the first 75. So there's always going to be low-hanging fruit, but I think the big leaps and the big opportunities are those where you're bold enough to make some major changes and some big bets on the future. And I think we're concentrating a lot of our effort on that.
Great, thanks. Vanessa, what's top of mind for you when it comes to challenges that you're looking to?
Yeah, always hard to think about challenges and low-hanging fruit in the same sentence, but I'd say probably top of mind for me is always culture and talent. We like to think that culture is really the backbone of innovation, right? You're not going to make the kind of leaps that Alan just spoke about without a culture that supports sort of a generosity around experimentation and moving things forward. And talent, I think, one of the things that we were able to start many years ago, but really expand while everyone was on work from home, is a rather unique internship program called Cupid, where we're bringing students in who aren't finance majors. They're not econ majors. They weren't thinking about, working in a branch or being an investment banker. But the reality is that we need a whole different sort of talent to be the next generation of leaders at the company. We need computer scientists and data scientists and product people and designers, political scientists, and we need people from diverse backgrounds. And so we've been able to tap into the passion and experience and ingenuity of thousands and thousands of students while giving them a window into how they might find something interesting to do at a financial institution. Because let's face it, it was hard to figure out what we all did before COVID. But I have a young son who thinks that I answer email and talk on really long Zoom meetings. And that sort of describes what a lot of us do all day, every day. But of course, our jobs are all individual and unique and different. And so I think, we try to lean into how could we sort of make sure that collectively, all of us are showing the next generation of leaders the variety of kinds of things they can do and the impact that they can have. And we think that will certainly help us here at Citi. But we'll also, simultaneously help those students figure out what they want to pursue, whether or not it happens to be with us. So I'd say for sure, both opportunity and low-hanging fruit. We all deal with talent every day. Is how we think collectively about culture and talent.
Great, thanks, Kira.
So the low-hanging fruit is, from kind of a technology company perspective, is that there's just so much to do, and business users, casual users are just ever so demanding, and they're consuming all of it. So that's the great thing, is just demand for services and applications and things that we build, and there's that gratification at the end that users are able to absorb a lot more, a lot faster. So the downside of that is you got to really be ruthless about prioritization, or not the downside, the challenge really here is that you have to prioritize, and you have to prioritize ruthlessly. And this is business, so you have to be really pragmatic about what really moves the business, what achieves customer loyalty. Usually those things go hand in hand, but you have to marry all of that together and produce a really, really top-notch user interface. You have to marry everything that you do into a user interface that's easily consumed. There's no tutorials, no manuals, right? It's applications have to be intuitive, and so prioritizing and building all of that in a way that gets you continuous progress in line with customer expectations, and really anticipating them, of course, are the challenges that we all face.
Great, thanks. Ashish, and if I might add another level of complexity, are there any cutting edge AI technologies that you feel might be able to help alleviate some of the issues?
Yeah, I think these bots, I'm a big believer of bots and how they can, with embedded AI, can really, you can then have them do symptom checkers and actually make appointments and kind of do some of those interface work, which you don't want to have been on 10 to 15 minutes on a doctor's office phone, just making an appointment, then saying there's no appointment for 10 days or something like that. You can automate all those processes. I think that's a low hanging fruit. What I believe is the tougher thing to do is to do that in a very equitable manner. The challenge we want to solve is, we do not want digital health to create bigger digital divide and creates a difference between people who lack the skills or the resources. So a lot of our effort as our strategic mission is, with No Patient Gets Behind, is to lead in terms of digital health equity, give them the resources, train them so they are able to act on the reminders rather than not showing and not knowing what is happening there. That's tougher to do, but very meaningful and very outcomes driven in the long run.
No, that's absolutely, and so important in this world. So thank you. Michelle?
I think the thing I found that is the low-hanging fruit is meeting people where they are. And so I'll put that in perspective from my responsibility as CIO. Is our goal is to be essentially, I tell my orgs, we're the trusted source of information for the employees. So if we're doing our job and getting them quickly to their roles, then we're enabling them to move faster to do the work they need in order to support our customers. So our commitment to them is when we look at tools, we look at automation, we look at the things that we try to solve for internally, meeting them where they are. They have cell phones. Have we thought about like what their process is to sign in? What their process is to get to this system? Do they need full access to that system? Have we made it easy for them to do from a phone, the iPad, or it's not always sitting at the computer? So that's why I say the funny thing is everyone, at this point just about has at least some level of phone. Like even if it's not the maybe not be a smartphone, what could you do? I've kind of challenged them as like for one of their like tweak week is what we call our innovation week. If you're meeting somebody where they are and they have something different, how do you make their job easier? And if we do that, that moves the company forward. If you are thinking from that perspective, then that helps. And that is a mental framing, because I think we always go for the big, right? Like, oh, we're going to create this whole system that does all these things. And I'm like, that's great, but that's going to take a really long time. Maybe we can solve for something a little smaller and a little quicker that will actually be very useful to our population. So thinking that a lot of times, just putting that framing on it, you get some really great ideas and things you just didn't even think of. And some of it, silly enough, is just turning on the right modes that we didn't even think of for the tools. Sometimes it's actually even been that.
Great. So we all know most transformative technologies need a lot of data to function. How do each of you think about data privacy and any concerns around that, and to balance the concerns around privacy when delivering transformative technologies? Who wants to go first? Ashish, maybe have you go first this time? Yeah.
Happy to. So I think the way we look at data and privacy is, first, we look at data in different buckets. One is we are a big believer in using synthetic data, which is not a real data, but has the same patterns to train AI algorithms and to do some validation work. So things which are very early, we don't want to risk our patient data. We actually use synthetic data as a lot for training that, or at least planning to use that a lot. The second is de-identified data or aggregated data, or I would say some public health data set which you can get. So that way, it's still not identifiable data, and we can actually do enormous amount of prediction work with that. We can convert our data into de-identified data. And then whenever identifiable data is needed, if it's for clinical research, we have very set processes in place, and that's healthcare globally. We use GPRD practices, but adopt whenever we can, and we have a European center, then we do it. But here we have a lot of laws called HIPAA. We have IRB, institution review boards, which actually approves not only the technical standards, the IT standards, but also whether the patients are getting consent, right? And the consent is that informative enough consent that people can make the right decision before they share the data. So I think with those governance in place that have been doing in clinical trials for a long time, I feel we have enough safeguards in place. Our real threat to privacy is not from us consciously allowing data to be done. It's unconsciously, security-wise, ransomware getting into our data. That's the biggest risk for our privacy these days, and not where we choose to give it in the right manner.
Great. Alan?
I think like most corporations, we strive and we're doing a good job at following the various regulations around the world. And I think that there is a change coming. We can see recent moves in discussions that are going on in the various legislatures around the world, where consumers are going to be put more in charge of their data, which is a good thing. And data rights are really the top of the agenda. So we respect all of this. We certainly comply with all the rules everywhere that we can, where they're published, and make modifications to our own internal systems to do this. It is top of mind. This leads into the concept of ethical AI as well, and the application of ethical AI. And we certainly are We have people that are dedicated to that within the company. So this is something that's evolving. It's been a learning the last 20 years as companies have monetized data.
Mhm.
It's now learnings for all of us that are sort of following on as to how do we do the thing that gets that nice balance between providing the protections that the consumers are entitled to, our employees are entitled to, while at the same time using information in a responsible way so that we can help make better decisions, give advice and things that will help everybody, including not just our employees, but information that can be used to better the planet and other things. So we're right in the middle of this. We certainly believe in it. We have people dedicated to it. And I think this is going to be a growing area within the company.
Great. Kira?
To us, it all starts at the very beginning. And so we talk about privacy by design, and that's built into every aspect of our product and our service. And of course, there are all sorts of packages and software and tools that are applied on top of it to make sure that that data is safeguarded, that it's secure, and that we comply with standards, whatever these standards are, whatever they are around the world, because they do change and they do evolve all the time. We do look at evolving technologies all the time in terms of what can we do in terms of bringing into Essential tools that can help us be even more robust or be able to respond faster, in case of any kind of issues that there may be. We don't share any data. And we provide training to our employees and everybody who touches anything that our software produces. So there are really strict rules in terms of how employees are trained, who's provided access to what, and within sort of the confines of Essential, but also within our application stack in terms of giving users control over what they want to share, what they don't want to share, and how they want to control their experience.
Great, thanks. Michelle?
For us, it's similar, and then just making sure that you only give the amount of access needed for a particular situation. So what we do is we spend a huge amount of time, even for internal tools, talking to privacy, talking to compliance, talking to each other about, do you really need all this data? Can we mimic this data? Can we actually, in that case, when you're trying to solve for certain situations, aggregated data that gives you an overall purview into experiences for our employees, for example. We want to make sure that employee privacy is very important to us, that we're adhering to all the laws. We also are in California, so we care a lot about our California privacy laws as well. And so making sure that we are not jeopardizing, essentially, we talk about the laws, but I talk to my employees about it being jeopardizing the experience. Like the goal is to make sure that we're adhering to the spirit of these things. And it's not about, oh, well, now I can't do my job. It's about, look, this is great for all of us. We should all be asking before we get something, do I need access to this? Do I need access to all of that? What do I really need to access to? How should I be doing that? That to me is, and they laugh at me because I'll say, I don't think I need access. You don't have to give me access to that. I'm pretty sure I don't need that. What I can take is a exploded example of that information, and it's enough for me to get what I need. And so having that purview around data and privacy, and really putting that acumen in when you are accessing anything, even if it's something simple. Should I have this? Who should have this? What am I going to use it for? And just putting that in everybody's head that that's important to ask no matter what you're doing. I think it's a huge part of it. And that's something we constantly try to remind each other, and that we also try to make sure that the employees know to bring when they are building things as well as accessing things for the company.
Great, thank you. And we have a couple minutes left, so there's one last question that I'll wrap us up with. Each one of you is very active in the startup community. So Kira, the RingCentral Ventures, and Vanessa, City Ventures. Can you speak to how do you look at innovation both internally and externally, and how are you partnering with the startup community?
Sure, I can start. I mean, we meet thousands and thousands of startups every year. We are very active investors, both in some of the sectors that you would expect, like fintech and commerce, but also in cyber, which is a super important complement, as Ashish mentioned, to the data questions that were being asked, and also through our impact fund. We're firm believers in partnership, that the kinds of challenges that corporations and people are facing in the world today are rarely challenges that are going to be met by one company alone. And so we do a lot of work with our portfolio companies and other startups. We also, as I mentioned before, we run internal incubation as well. But our sort of primary mode is, if we think there's a great solution out there, we think there's a great entrepreneur, great technology out there, that someone is specialized in and focused on, we're looking to understand, are there ways that we can add that to the toolbox or toolkit of what we have to serve our clients? So I think you'll continue to see more and more. I know, at least in my sector in financial services, it's always sort of headline grabbing, right? Is fintech an enemy or a friend or a frenemy? But I think, we really do see that that some things do need to be built internally. There are many other things where partnering, not only with startups, but frankly across industries, will bring, I think, us much more robust and interesting solutions going forward.
Great. Kira, quickly.
In many ways, I will second what Vanessa has said. We look at not yet thousands. Central Ventures is relatively new, but now in hundreds of startups out there. We mostly focus on the future of work as an area for our investments, and really things that can complement, extend, Central, bring more value to our customers, and push the envelope out there in terms of what Ashish said. We're not going to go back ever to the way that we were. We'd be probably not a very intelligent race if we did, and we know we're all smart people. So we're pushing the envelope on that, and we're seeking companies, entrepreneurs that can help the world do this, and can help Central do that. So when we look at companies, we look at is this an independent investment? Could this potentially be an investment and a partner? Could this be an acquisition? Because we can't build it all. There's absolutely no way that we could build this all in Central, despite having a very strong innovation organization and being considered innovative out there, one of the most innovative companies out there in our industry. I used to say this thing at one of our user conferences. Back 3 years, AI was not quite as mainstream as it is right now. And we had a number of companies that looked at basically taking our media streams and enhancing them, either for agent coaching or for some other enhanced value to our customers, such as enhanced transcription and so on. Back in the day, and that was just 3 years ago, I would say that there's millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars that are now being built around Central on our platform, integrated to Central, and all bringing value to our customers in ways that we couldn't have imagined. Well, now many of these companies have become unicorns, and there's billions built, in that same from that same cloud that's evolved, and that's really. What really we look at is, and a lot of that is AI. The word AI is in many of these. In many of these companies and instances, that examples that I could give if we had more time. But really, what's important to us is that it's made people's lives better. It's made our user community. We've brought more value to our user community, better experience. And that's ultimately what innovation is all about. It's about customers for us.
Great, thank you. Ashish, Michelle, and Ellen, if you just want to quickly share your thoughts.
Totally agree. I think we need to believe in inside out and outside in innovation at the same time, and each empowers. I'm a big believer of entrepreneurs. I think many organizations don't do that good a job in identifying. Entrepreneur is nothing more. It's a learned skill set, an empowerment skill set. And if you can empower that, your employees, magic can happen. So big believer in that.
Great. Thanks, Alan.
I would concur with what everybody said. It's it's inside out, it's outside in. One thing that we've just set up is that how do you help the community? How do you help the entrepreneurs in different ways? And down in Southern California, we're now going to dedicate a number of stores where they're going to be live labs.
Wow.
And we're inviting entrepreneurs to come in and test their technology live with live customers, with our in different locations, different sets, different technologies, because they need real feedback as much as we need real feedback in order to be able to grow and create their products. So we just went through the first intake, and we're going to be launching that this fall. And for about 4 months, be trying a whole bunch of new technologies that some have never seen the light of day before in retail. We're going to see what works and what doesn't, and we're all going to learn together. And I think partnering is the way to do this going forward.
That's incredible. Michelle, any last thoughts?
I'll be quick. So I don't do a huge amount of this at work, but I do on outside, which is I lend my voice to a lot of different entrepreneurial companies or people just have great ideas. And one of the things I always tell them is to make sure that they're solving for a problem they think needs to be fixed for them. So when you do that, there's a lot more care and feeding in what you do, and you're doing something that has a viable purpose, right? And so a lot of times when I'm talking to them, they have all these great ideas, and I'm like, what made you come to this? And sometimes, oh, it's because of the money. And I'm like, well, is it really solving the right problem? Sometimes I send them back and say, what's the real problem you want to solve, and why is that important, and who will you help? And that lens tends to help them. And then just from a perspective of the type of company that we are at Twilio, giving people access to our APIs to be able to utilize them and test and come up with just really neat ideas. We love that. We love to see what people create with it. It's usually not something we anticipated. And a lot of times we're like, oh, that's great. We hadn't actually thought of that. So just making sure that you give people the opportunity and not being really prescriptive, and then seeing what they come up with. It. They solve fantastic problems, and probably better problems than I would ever try and solve.
Great. Well, thank you so much. I know you're all super busy, and thank you for being here, for joining us. Really appreciate your time, and hopefully we'll get to do this again. So thanks.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.